The Devil's Wedding Dress. Part 1. The Stitch That Shouldn't Be. There are dresses made for beauty, and there are dresses made for ruin. They found it in the attic of the abandoned De Vries estate, boxed in silence, wrapped in moth-eaten linen, and sealed with wax long gone brittle. The tag, handwritten in florid ink, read only, "Do not open. Do not wear. Do not remember." Of course, someone did. Her name was Vivian March, a fashion archivist with a taste for the dramatic and a knack for uncovering lost couture. The De Vries house was her latest obsession, an old Gothic wreck perched on a cliffside like a grieving bride, its windows weeping salt and shadow from years of sea spray. Vivian had come for buttons, silk, maybe a corset or two. She did not expect to find a dress that bled. Not at first, of course. She took it back to her studio, brushed off the dust, and revealed a masterpiece. Layers of ivory tulle, hand-beaded with jet stones that shimmered like spilled ink, the bodice tight as a second skin, boned in something darker than whalebone. And the veil, oh, the veil fell like night, sheer as breath, trimmed with delicate lace, and threaded in places with what looked almost like hair. It was too perfect, too theatrical. She should have walked away. Instead, she whispered, "Where have you been all my life?" and ran her fingers down the seam of the spine. That's when she pricked her thumb on a hidden pin. The blood vanished instantly, sucked into the fabric like it had been waiting. The next morning, Vivian woke to find the dress had moved. She was sure she'd left it on the mannequin in the corner. But now it stood before the full-length mirror, sleeves raised just so, as if someone had tried it on in the night. The air smelled faintly of roses and something beneath it, older, rotting, familiar. And the mirror? It didn't reflect her. It reflected a bride with black eyes and a mouth sewn shut. Chapter 2. The Veil That Saw Everything. Vivian stared at the dress and the mannequin before the mirror, heart pounding, lips parted like a scream waiting to hatch. "It's just the draft," she whispered to herself. Old houses creak. Things shift. But the floorboards beneath the mannequin hadn't creaked. They'd groaned, like something heavy had walked across them in the night. She went to touch the veil. Her fingers trembled as they brushed the lace, and for the briefest moment, she swore the fabric shivered. Then she heard the whisper. Not in her ears, but in the back of her skull, like a memory she'd never made. She promised him love, and he stitched her silence. Vivian snatched her hand back. That afternoon, her assistant Ava arrived. "I swear this place gives me the creeps," Ava muttered, clutching her coffee. "What's that smell?" "It's like old roses and something rotting." Vivian didn't answer. She was staring at the dress again. Now that the morning light streamed in, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. Inside the bodice, hidden beneath a layer of transparent gauze, was a face. Not drawn, not embroidered. Imprinted, somehow like a scream frozen in silk. Hollow eyes. A mouth sewn shut. The face of a woman whose soul had been threaded into fabric. She turned away, suddenly dizzy. Ava leaned closer to the veil. "We should show this at the Gothic Revival Gala. This thing's a masterpiece." Vivian snapped. "No. No one wears it. Ever." But it was too late. The veil brushed Ava's skin, and her pupils dilated, swallowing her irises like black holes. She whispered, "He's coming." That night, Vivian dreamed of needles. Dozens of them. Glinting silver, floating in the dark. Sewing something. Stitching her skin closed. And somewhere in the dream, a voice smooth as velvet, cold as bone, murmured, "Wear it, and you'll never be alone again." Chapter 3. The Bride Beneath the Skin. Vivian locked the studio door that night, not out of habit, but instinct. She didn't trust the dress. She didn't trust the mirror. And after Ava's strange trance and that awful whisper, "He's coming," she wasn't even sure she trusted herself. She didn't sleep. At midnight, the studio lights flickered on. Vivian jolted awake on the couch, heart racing. The locked door was still locked. No signs of intrusion. And yet, in the center of the room, the mannequin was gone. The dress stood upright on its own. Not slumped. Not folded. Not arranged. Standing. The veil lifted slightly, as if in greeting. And there, where the mannequin had been, were black, withered footprints, wet, but not with water. Something darker. Thicker. A slow, oozing trail leading to the base of the full-length mirror. Vivian's breath hitched. She took a trembling step forward. The reflection showed nothing. No dress. No footprints. No Vivian. Only the mirror, and behind the glass, a corridor. Long. Narrow. draped in white lace, stained red at the edges. At the far end stood a woman with no face, only bandages, and a veil like the one in her studio, fluttering gently in air that didn't exist. Vivian turned away, and the mirror cracked. She called Ava in the morning. No answer. No text. No read receipt. Her phone rang at 9:13 a.m. Blocked number. She answered. There was no voice. Only sewing. Needles stitching fabric. Flesh. Breath. And then a whisper, soft, amused. You opened the box. That means you said yes. Vivian hung up. Outside, the morning sky had dimmed, sunlight weak and watery. She went to check the dress again, determined to destroy it. But it wasn't in the studio anymore. It was in her closet. Waiting. Hung on a padded hanger like it had always belonged there. The mirror beside it had fogged from the inside. And written in the condensation, in perfect script. The fitting begins tonight. Vivian sank to the floor. She remembered what the tag on the box had said. Do not open. Do not wear. Do not remember. And suddenly, the worst part of all hit her. She couldn't remember who gave her the key to the attic, or why she'd gone there in the first place, or why, when she stared at the dress too long, she felt like she'd worn it before. Chapter 4. The Needle Remembers. The fitting began at 3:06 a.m. Vivian awoke not in her bed, but standing, barefoot, in front of the mirror. Her fingers were pricked with tiny beads of dried blood. Thin red threads wound around her wrists, as though someone had tied them in a bridal ribbon while she slept. The dress was still on its hanger, but the veil was gone. It now lay across her shoulders, fastened not with pins, but with something deeper, embedded. She reached up to tear it off and screamed. There were stitches. Invisible to the eye, but clear to the touch, fine, nearly imperceptible threads had been sewn into the nape of her neck. The veil was part of her now. Vivian staggered back. Her vision blurred. And for a fleeting second, the room shimmered, not her studio, not her bedroom, but a long, candlelit hallway lined with torn portraits and open mouths. She blinked, and it was gone. The next morning, she called every occult historian she knew. One name came back, whispered like a curse. Isolde Renard. Excommunicated scholar. Collector of cursed couture. Last seen living in a deconsecrated church outside Marseille. Vivian flew there that night. She found Isolde sitting beneath a stained glass window depicting the Archangel Michael slaying Lucifer. Except the Lucifer in the glass had Vivian's face. That's when she started to shake. Isolde studied her for a long time, then sighed. The dress chose you. I didn't choose it, Vivian snapped. But you touched it. You bled for it. And now it's tailoring your soul. Vivian stared at her. What is it? Isolde poured red wine into a goblet, but the liquid moved thicker than wine, coagulated. It was made in 1843 in Paris. The bride was named Juliette Noir. She was a seamstress who fell in love with the wrong man, a nobleman obsessed with the occult. Vivian said nothing. Her skin crawled. He promised her eternal love, but betrayed her on their wedding night. She found him in bed with another, and stitched his mouth closed with a golden needle before setting herself aflame in her bridal gown. Isolde looked up. The dress survived. But it wasn't just silk anymore. It remembered her hatred, her grief, her pain. And now, it tailors whoever wears it. Vivian's voice came out thin. Tailors them how? Isolde leaned in. It unstitches who you are, and makes you into her. Piece by piece. Needle by needle. Thread by soldam thread. Vivian's hands began to shake. Can it be destroyed? No, Isolde said simply. But you can offer it another wearer. Vivian recoiled. You're telling me to pass it on, Isolde said. Every cursed thing must be fed, or it will devour its host. Fed what? Isolde smiled faintly. Love. Memory. Blood. A body willing enough, or foolish enough, to wear beauty without question. Vivian stood, backing away. No. I won't damn someone else. Isolde's eyes gleamed. Then prepare for the final fitting. That night, back in her hotel room, Vivian found a box waiting on the bed. Unmarked. Inside, the wedding dress. Folded perfectly. No blood. No tears. Just ready. And stitched inside the collar, in a thread that shimmered silver in the moonlight. Do you remember me now? She screamed, and the mirror cracked again. But this time, a hand reached through. Chapter 5. The final fitting begins. Vivian didn't scream for long. She couldn't. The hand from the mirror wasn't solid, not exactly. It felt like cold lace and smoke, threaded through with something deeper, older, hungry. It brushed her cheek. And then it was gone. She stood alone in the room, heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The mirror, once cracked, was now whole again. But something inside it had changed. Its reflection lagged by half a second, as if deciding whether to show her herself or someone else. She turned toward the box. The dress still waited inside, motionless and mocking. But now she noticed something else tucked into the folds of the silk, a photograph. Sepia-toned. Ancient. It showed a woman in the dress. And the woman had Vivian's face. Her hands began to tremble. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. She didn't remember getting into the dress. One moment she was pacing the room. The next, it was on her. The bodice cinched tight like a second skin. The skirt moved with an unnatural grace, swaying as though caught in a wind no one else could feel. The veil settled around her face like a shroud, and the stitches on her neck began to pull tighter, tugging at the meat beneath. Vivian stumbled toward the mirror and saw Juliet, the woman from the photograph, from the story. Her face, her eyes, but with Vivian's voice, Vivian's bones, Vivian's panic clawing at the inside of borrowed skin. "Please," she whispered. "Stop this." The mirror fogged with her breath, and words appeared once more, this time written by a finger she could not see. "He left me. You won't." The pain began in her fingertips, pins and needles at first, then fire. The dress was stitching itself into her, pulling threads through flesh and nerve. Binding, sewing, mending a soul by unmaking it. Her memories unraveled, one by one. Her mother's face, gone. The smell of her first apartment, gone. The sound of her own laugh, gone. In their place, new thoughts bloomed like rot. Candlelight weddings and hidden crypts. A man's voice whispering lies in the dark. Fire-catching lace. The heat of betrayal. Vivian staggered to the floor. "I'm not her." But even as she spoke, her voice was changing, becoming softer, older. French. Juliet's voice. The hotel room door creaked open. A young maid stepped inside, carrying fresh towels. "Pardon, I. She stopped, stared, dropped everything. Because there, standing before the mirror in a dress that shimmered like bone and starlight, was a bride with eyes as black as ink. And the bride turned to her, smiling with lips just beginning to bleed through the stitches. Vivian's reflection remained frozen in the mirror, screaming silently. But the woman in the dress? She stepped forward. The final fitting had begun, and the devil was ready to walk her down the aisle. Chapter 6. Something old, something borrowed. Vivian woke in a place that did not exist. There were no windows, no doors. Only mirrors. Endless, towering mirrors, some cracked, some fogged, some bleeding. And in every reflection, she wore the dress. Sometimes she was smiling. Sometimes she was weeping. And in one, she was burning. The ground beneath her wasn't floor, but fabric, an ocean of tulle and lace, slick with shadow. She stood shakily, clutching her sides. Her skin itched beneath the gown, like something was crawling beneath it. "Where am I?" she whispered. The mirrors answered with whispers of their own. A dozen voices. 100. The seamstress remembers. The altar is waiting. You were her grief. Now we're her vengeance. Vivian staggered back, tripping on the veil, nearly falling into one of the mirrors. But this one showed her. Truly her. Pale, wild-eyed, lips raw where she'd clawed at the invisible stitches. She pounded her fists on the glass. "Let me out." And then her reflection whispered. "You let me in." Suddenly, the mirror fractured, not from impact, but from within. Something was clawing its way through. It wasn't Juliet this time. It was the nobleman, the one who'd betrayed her. His mouth was sewn shut, eyes carved out, skin blackened by fire. And in his hand, he held a golden needle, the same one Juliet had used to seal his fate. Vivian stumbled back as he raised it toward the glass and began sewing. Not with thread, but with veins. Each stitch he made on the mirror's surface appeared on Vivian's chest, blooming blood through the dress like flowers of pain. "Stop," she screamed. "I'm not her." But the figure didn't listen, because he wasn't sewing her. He was sewing Juliet's memory into her flesh. She fell to her knees, trembling, breath hitching in short, shallow bursts. Something was cracking inside her. A split down the middle of her mind. one half still Vivian. The other, Juliet, whispering beneath her skin. And then, from the distance, beyond the mirrors, beyond the dream, a sound pierced through the madness. Church bells. Faint, warped, tolling 12. A wedding bell chime. A signal. Vivian's head snapped up. That's when she understood. The dress wasn't finished. This was not about possession. This was a recreation. The Devil's Damned collection didn't just consume people, it restaged tragedies. It fed on reenactment, on grief repeated. It stitched the past into the present again and again until the ending was right. And in this case, Vivian's body was the stage for Juliet's vengeance. Unless she could find a way to rip the stitches before the final bell tolled. In one last flash of clarity, she remembered something Isolde had said. Every cursed thing must be fed, or it devours its host. If she couldn't offer it a new bride, maybe she could starve it. Cut herself off. Destroy the dress from the inside. Even if it meant bleeding out through every thread. She reached down, and with shaking hands, tore open the hem of the gown. Needles spilled from the fabric. Hundreds. Thousands. And nestled among them, gleaming faintly, was the golden one. Juliet's. She picked it up and whispered to herself, "If I have to become the seamstress, I'll choose what I sew." Then she pierced her palm and began to stitch. Chapter 7. Blood Between the Seams. The first stitch hurt more than Vivian expected. She drove the golden needle through the soft flesh of her palm, then pulled it out slowly, trailing her own blood like a thread. Her breath came in sharp gasps, but she didn't stop. The dress was alive, she could feel it tighten around her, as if trying to stop her hand. But the golden needle had power. Not because of magic, because of memory. Juliet's pain was sewn into every inch of that metal. Her betrayal. Her rage. Her choice to burn. And now, Vivian's choice was different. She stitched her name into the hem of the gown. Not Juliet. Not the Devil's Bride. Vivian. With each letter, the mirrors around her shuddered. They began to splinter, not crack, but peel back, as if revealing the dark velvet beneath reality. Images flickered in their silver depths of all the women who'd worn the dress before. A girl in a sanatorium, whispering to herself through bleeding lips. A war widow, dancing with a shadow in a ballroom no one else could see. A runaway bride, found in the woods, veil soaked in her own blood, smile still frozen on her face. Vivian whispered to them, "I see you." And for a moment, the dress loosened. But the devil wasn't done. The air grew thick, the candlelight dimmed, and a low growl echoed from beneath the mirrors. The floor of fabric began to ripple, undulating like a living sea. And then, rising from beneath the satin, the groom. No face. No eyes. Just a black silhouette in a ruined tuxedo, skin stitched tight across a hollow skull. Chains of braided hair and rosary beads hung from his sleeves like trophies. He held no ring. Only a burning brand shaped like a heart pierced by a needle. He stepped forward. "You were meant to finish the vow," he hissed, voice scraping like rusted metal. "You were made for her. Your blood fits the seams." Vivian stood tall. Her gown now bore her name, her pain, her refusal. "No," she said. "You're not the one who made me." She raised the golden needle. The groom lunged. They crashed into the mirrors, shattering reflections as they tumbled into a void beyond glass. Everything spun: fabric, blood, veils, memories. Time unraveled. Vivian stabbed at him, again and again, golden thread binding his shadowed limbs, wrapping around his neck like a noose sewn from resolve. "I'm not Juliet," she said, "and I don't belong to you." The groom shrieked, a sound that wasn't sound at all, but the collapse of promises. The weight of 1,000 failed loves. The cry of every cursed bride who never got to say no. Vivian pushed him into the final mirror and stabbed the needle into her own chest. The world exploded in white. She awoke on the floor of her studio. Alone. Breathless. Still wearing the dress, except now, it was gray. Faded. Lifeless. And in her palm, the golden needle had turned to ash. The mirror was whole again. But her reflection smiled back. No veil. No echo. Just Vivian. Truly, finally, herself. Chapter 8. The Ashes and the Lace. 3 weeks passed. Vivian didn't speak of what happened. She buried the remnants of the dress in a lead-lined trunk, sealed it with salt, iron nails, and prayers she didn't believe in. Then she locked it away in the coldest room of her studio, the one with no windows, where the floorboards always creaked for no reason. She resumed her work quietly. took on small clients. Sketch without passion. But something had changed. Her hand still bore a faint scar in the shape of a needle's eye. And when she looked too long into mirrors, she sometimes saw another veil drifting just behind her shoulder, too far back to catch clearly, but close enough to make her pause. Ava never returned. No one ever found her. Not a message. Not a sighting. Not a trace. Vivian filed a report, of course. But deep down, she knew. The veil had touched her too long. Ava had become a stitch in the collection. One night, Vivian found herself at her desk, sketching without thinking. Her pencil moved in smooth, sure strokes. The lines were curved, elegant, familiar. It wasn't until she stepped back that she realized what she had drawn. The dress. Not just any version. The exact version. The veil. The bodice. The pinpricks of blood at the hem. The haunted beauty of it. Her hand trembled. She wanted to tear the page, then stopped. Because at the bottom of the sketch, in a handwriting not her own, was written, "She never meant to burn. She meant to become unforgettable." Vivian stared. And for the first time, she understood. Juliet hadn't created the dress to destroy her betrayer. She created it to survive. To haunt. To be remembered. A monument sewn in silk and blood and grief. Later that night, she received an email from a collector she didn't know. Wealthy. Eccentric. Interested in obscure historical gowns with unresolved origin stories. They offered a large sum. Enough to rebuild her entire studio. Enough to move on. All they wanted was a sketch. And if possible, the original dress. Vivian hovered over the reply button. Her fingers shook. Somewhere in the room, the shadows stirred. She could hear the faintest sound of thread being pulled through fabric. A whisper behind the veil. "Say yes, and I'll make you eternal." She never hit send. But when she woke the next morning, the trunk was gone. And somewhere, across the sea, perhaps, there is a mirror waiting in a new home. And a box resting beneath it, tied with black ribbon. Inside? Something old. Something borrowed. Something remembered. And lace that remembers every bride it ever ruined.
Every story has an ending, but some mysteries live on. If you enjoyed this tale, don't let it fade into the shadows. Smash that like button and subscribe for more thrilling stories that will transport you beyond the veil of the ordinary. Subscribe to our channel and your name will appear at the beginning of our next video, where we will pleasantly thank you for your subscribing. Tap the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the unknown. Share your thoughts in the comments. What twists did you see coming? And what secrets do you think still remain? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and let the next story begin.